Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Justice, Homelessness in Anne Arundel County. My name is Jaden Ferris. I'm a senior at South River High School and the co-chair of the Let's Talk Justice Planning Committee. In the summer of 2020, Let's Talk Justice was created as a forum for students to discuss racism and social justice in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. Beginning with the student-led planning committee, the vision of Let's Talk Justice quickly developed into a place where students will be able to have a voice about various social justice issues and injustices. We use our platform to engage, educate, and empower by conducting student-led workshops, assisting with curriculum development, providing insights for new teachers, and hosting forums such as the one you'll hear about today. Let's Talk Justice is dedicated to ensuring youth voice is present in both our school and our home communities. Today's event is a partnership between Anne Arundel County Public Schools, Food for Thought Community Outreach Services Incorporated, and the Anne Arundel County Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families. During this panel, you'll hear from community members that have experienced homelessness, as well as organizations and offices that support people who have and may currently be experiencing homelessness. We'll discuss some of the root causes and the impact that homelessness has on those experiencing it, as well as its effects on our community as a whole. We hope that you will walk away with a better understanding of this crisis, but most importantly, we hope that you'll be inspired to do the work within your sphere of influence to eliminate this circumstance that so many of Anne Arundel County residents are having. I'll now turn it over to Jana Monroe, who will shed some light on why we are here today.
Thanks, Jaden. Hello, everyone. My name is Jana Monroe. I am a senior at Severna Park High School, and I am the social media manager of Let's Talk Justice Planning Committee. This issue of homelessness in Anne Arundel County is one that is very prevalent in the lives of many individuals, children, youth, and adults alike. Homelessness isn't someone else's issue. It's a problem that has a ripple effect throughout the community. Although homelessness was on the rise even before the COVID-19 pandemic, these events have made homelessness more pronounced than ever. Homelessness impacts our present as well as our future. However, homelessness is not only a local issue, but a global one. Here are some statistics that convey the purpose of this forum. According to the latest Community Foundation of the Anne Arundel County Needs Assessments, or CFAAC, quote, homelessness is continuing to rise for individuals and families in the county. In 2021, 871 single adults reported as chronically homeless. The number of families without stable housing is harder to estimate, but that number is likely at least 850 on any given evening. In addition, quote, as of June 2022, there are 1,046 homeless youth identified in the county public school system. It is also shared that, quote, homeless families are becoming more prevalent in our human services systems, including emergency rooms, childcare centers, and public schools. It is almost impossible to accurately calculate the number of homeless residents in Anne Arundel County. However, some of the data is captured in the Federal Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS. When numbers from service providers are merged, data is able to reveal information about growing homelessness. These numbers point to the fact that the number of homeless families is growing. The causes of homelessness reflect an intricate interplay between structural factors as well as individual circumstances. Homelessness is usually the result of a cumulative impact of numbers of factors rather than a single one. Furthermore, with winter and colder weather approaching in the coming months, this forum is felicitous in the sense that homelessness is one of the issues that has heavily impacted this season. Circumstances such as snow, frozen roads, and inclement weather exposes individuals to extreme conditions and can pose a very real threat to their safety and well-being. This can be a challenge for people experiencing homelessness. By working to address and tackle homelessness in this county, we're able to work towards creating significant contributions to the existing evidence on homelessness. Today, we are here to explore this topic and to take a deep dive as to how it relates to Anne Arundel County. I'll turn it back over to you, Jaden, to introduce our panelists.
Our first panelist today is Ms. Jennifer LeKay. Ms. LeKay is a pupil personnel worker who works as the McKinney-Vento Education Liaison for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. She has served in this role for 5 years. Prior to serving as the McKinney-Vento Education Liaison, she served as a pupil personnel worker and professional school counselor. In her role as the McKinney-Vento Education Liaison, She manages grant funding and programming to support students in AACPS and families enrolled under the McKinney-Vento Education Assistance Act. She serves as a resource to her student service colleagues and works closely with the homeless serving agencies in Anne Arundel County. This work is important to her because she has seen the positive impact the right resources, supports, and people can have on students and families experiencing housing instability. Next, we have Dr. Sean Ashworth, founder of Food for Thought Outreach Services Incorporated, a nonprofit organization with a mission to provide individuals and families with assistance in the areas of homelessness, nutrition, mental health, and job training. Food for Thought Community Outreach Services seeks to develop, conduct, and promote activities that facilitate growth in its participants for the purpose of improving self confidence and becoming active and engaged community members who also feel connected in their community. Dr. Ashworth is a dedicated leader and over the past 4 years has provided support to approximately 8,000 individuals and families living in shelters, on the streets as homeless, and struggling families living below the poverty line. Food for Thought Community Outreach Services provides snack bags, hot meals, toiletries, and clothes on a weekly basis to approximately 150 homeless individuals and those living in shelter. Dr. Ashworth also serves as a volunteer with a local food pantry and travels almost daily to the food bank and other local stores to pick up food to compassionately distribute it to those in need. Their service to the community is unwavering and seems to only get stronger over time. Next, we have Miss Jennifer Ruth, who is a pupil personnel worker for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. She has served as a pupil personnel worker in the North County feeder for over 10 years. And prior to working as a pupil personnel worker, she was a professional school counselor at the elementary level in the Arundel cluster. Jennifer is passionate about working with students and families to ensure they have the resources and supports needed to be successful. Our final panelist is Dr. Pamela Brown. Dr. Brown is currently the Executive Director of the Anne Arundel County Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families, one of the 24 Maryland local management boards. She has held several leadership positions over the past 30 years in government and in the not-for-profit sector. Throughout her career, she has worked on addressing inequities across government and educational systems. She obtained her PhD in educational leadership at Florida Atlantic University, where her dissertation focused on the importance of community partnerships in low-income communities. And now I'll pass it over to Jana to introduce our panelists.
At this time, we'll hear from the Let's Talk Justice members that will help guide our conversation. Each facilitator will provide their name, grade, school, and why they wanted to be a part of this forum. We'll start off with Kate.
Hello everyone, my name is Kate Oridelli, a junior at Meade High School. I am one of the co-chairs of the Let's Talk Justice Planning Committee. I wanted to be a part of this forum because I wanted to be able to shed light on the issue of homelessness and raise awareness and educate other people as well about homelessness and what they can do to be a change maker in the community.
Next, we have Larry.
Hi, I'm Larry Reese. I'm a junior at Annapolis High School. I'm one of the newest members of Let's Talk Justice. I wanted to be a part of this forum because I wanted to educate myself on the topic of homelessness, to then be able to engage and educate others on homelessness.
Lastly, we have Abiha.
Hi everyone, my name is Abiha Rizvi and I'm a senior at O'Mell High School and I am a community liaison in Let's Talk Justice. And I wanted to be part of this forum because I believe it is important to raise awareness about homelessness and educate others on the same topic.
Thank you, LCJ members. We're so glad that you could be here with us today. With our panelists and facilitators in place, let's take a moment to hear a few words from the Anne Arundel County Public School Superintendent, Dr. Mark Bedell.
Greetings to our parents, students, guardians, and community members. This is Superintendent Bedell with an important message. As you all know, there are many families that are plagued by homelessness. And in Anne Arundel County, we too experience homelessness in this school district. Now, as a former student growing up as a homeless child, I truly understand the impact of what this does to families, having to figure out from day to day and night to night how they're going to survive. And in particular for students who then have to come to school and try to learn amidst all of the unknowns that they will face when they leave our schoolhouse. So as a school district, we are committed to doing everything that we can to ensure that this is a welcoming environment. And we as a community as a whole have a responsibility to do our part to try to help those in need. And so as I continue to move through my tenure, and as I've stated earlier, homelessness is something that's near and dear to my heart because of what I experienced during my high school years. I simply ask that as we continue to push becoming one of the greatest school districts in the country and one of the greatest counties in the United States, that we all take seriously the impacts of what homelessness can do. Now, from a personal, local, and immediate standpoint, I can absolutely share with you what I have experienced. The trauma that comes with not knowing where you will sleep from night to night. The trauma that comes with not knowing whether you will be able to eat. And for us students who had to go through this, the beautiful part was if we were in school, we knew we were guaranteed at least 2 meals a day. Or going into the holiday season and not expecting anything because you're just trying to survive. And for kids, these things are big in their development as they continue to grow. And so we just ask that we come together and that we eliminate some of those variables, some of the emotional and social distraught that comes with variables of homelessness. And so Anne Arundel County Public Schools will be committed to doing everything that we can, the support that we will provide for our McKinney-Vento students and others that reside within our community. We are here to extend our hand to do our part to make sure that our students all have an opportunity to learn in a barrier-free educational environment. And this is our commitment. So I just want to once again thank each and every single one of you for listening to this message. And I ask that everybody continue to do their part. Anne Arundel County is one, and how we lift each other up really dictates the overall strength of this county as we continue to grow and develop. This is Superintendent Bedell. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. What a powerful message.
To ensure equity of voice and address each question that has been submitted. For each question, we have identified 2 panelists to initially respond, and then we'll open up the floor if other panelists would like to contribute. For our viewing audience, scrolling at the bottom of the screen is the number for the Anne Arundel County Systems of Care so that residents can get connected to a variety of resources. System of Care is a partnership between all child-serving agencies to meet children and families' basic needs in a cross-system collaborative model. If you or anyone you know is in need of support, contact the Anne Arundel County Systems of Care at 1-800-485-0041. Without further ado, let's talk justice, homelessness in Anne Arundel County. Jana, will you start off with our first question?
Of course. So our first question is, how do you define homelessness? Ms. LeKay and Dr. Brown, what are your thoughts?
Thank you, Jana. And thank you so much for the nice introduction. I'm really happy to be here today. I am the McKinney-Vento Education Liaison, and here in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, we define homelessness as the McKinney-Vento definition of homelessness. And so that is a student or family that lacks a fixed, regular, or adequate nighttime residence. So while we may have that picture of homelessness as families on the street, that certainly is and does meet the definition of homelessness, we expand that definition to include those families that are doubled up due to the loss of permanent housing, and families that are in hotels or shelters or transitional housing. So our definition of homelessness here that we use in AACPS is the McKinney-Vento definition that provides a broader definition for us to be able to support our families that are in transition and unstably housed.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me here this afternoon. I'm so happy that you're focusing on homelessness as a social justice issue. The whole question of the definition of homelessness is a thorny one, and that the biggest thorn, in all honesty, is the federal government, because the federal government defines homelessness in a very narrow way. They only consider a person to be homeless if they are on the street, no roof, nowhere to go. That is not my experience of what homelessness looks like. So let me tell you how I, Pam Brown, and many others define homelessness. For me, there are many families who do not call themselves homeless, who are homeless. They are the families who are living in hotels, who are living with other people, who are living in church basements. They only have a temporary roof, and most nights they may not know where the next temporary roof is coming from. And I want you to think about all the children who are living like that. We know there's over 1,000 children who every night may not know where the next night will be the place that they put their heads. For young people, it's the same thing. So we have a program that's all around youth homelessness. Many of our youth do not consider themselves homeless and don't want anybody to know they're homeless. They may be sleeping on their friend's couch. They may be sleeping in someone's garage. They may be sleeping in a church. They may be sleeping on a bench. They may be sleeping in an abandoned building. They are often getting themselves ready to come to school, getting themselves ready to go to work with no permanent roof over their head. And the reason it's very important to understand that the federal homelessness definition is so narrow is because it drives funding for homelessness. So all federal funding is driven to that very narrow category of people, usually chronically homeless, usually single, who are actually on the streets at night. Thank you.
Okay, so from then we can move on to the next question. Thank you so much for helping us get more clarity about homelessness. It's really important for us to have a shared language and understanding of what really homelessness means, and like what Dr. Brown was saying, kind of that narrow idea that the government puts out. Next, we're going to move on to Larry for our next question.
Thank you, Jana. We'll start this question off with Dr. Ashworth and Ms. Roof. The question is, what are some misconceptions that people may have about homelessness? Examples could be that many people think that students who experience homelessness don't attend school, or they're living in a car, tent, etc.
So I'll start, Jen, if that's okay. And thank you for the question. I totally agree with Dr. Pam Brown, and I'm glad she answered the question, because people think homeless are just the people on the street that look dirty and are laying on the sidewalks. And Dr. Brown hit it right on the nail, that we have many families who are living 5, 6 families in 2-bedroom house, right? So they exist. And so, I think people, to Dr. Brown's point, they don't consider themselves, because they have a roof, they're lying on a bed or a couch or a floor. And so they don't consider themselves homeless. And I think, people, that's the first thing. Homeless, oh, you must live on the street. Well, no, I live with my auntie. I actually have a nephew right now who is considered homeless, but he's residing with me. He has a home, he's getting a good meal. But technically, by the McKinney-Vento, he would be considered a homeless student. And so I think, we've got to open up our minds and our thoughts, and just really look at the not just how they look, because I think that's what we first do. We look at, oh, they must be homeless. They don't look good. They're dirty, or their clothes are dirty, or they smell. We've got lots of families who smell really good and look good, who come to school every single day, and you would not know unless they tell you. And I'm sorry, Jen could give you many of those stories. Thank you for the question.
And just to expand upon that government definition of homelessness and going back to McKinney-Vento, the Education Act, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about homelessness is that under McKinney-Vento, it also includes our at-risk youth. And so what that may look like is students who can no longer stay in their homes due to a variety of different challenges. It could be that their caregiver or their parent is struggling with substance use and that it's just not a safe environment for them to continue staying at or living in. There have also been instances where students have had to leave their homes with their caregivers or their parent due to abuse or neglect. And then there are cases where we have youth who are chronic runaways for a variety of different reasons and challenges that they may be dealing with. And I think that when we think of homelessness initially, we don't always take into consideration the issues that our at-risk youth are really dealing with and how that leads to a place of vulnerability and not having permanent, stable, or adequate housing.
And may I just add, I always talk about the working poor, the work that I do with BWI Airport. We have people who go to work every single day who can't necessarily afford housing. So they're living in the airport. That's their home. They call it their home. They get up and leave from there. And I always say also, we all have been or are one paycheck away from being homeless, right? My mother used to say that all the time. She used to say, just pay your rent, pay your bills. Nobody will ever know that you're put out. Because right, when you get put out, your furniture gets on the side of the street. So if you don't have any food, no one will ever know that, but they will know if you get put out. So we'll all at some point have been, will be one paycheck away from being homeless, especially in this economy and how things are going today in our community and low paying jobs and all those other things that are barriers to people really getting the support that they need.
Okay, we really appreciate you taking us through some of those myths about people experiencing homelessness. We know that those often lead to misconceptions and biases towards people who can perpetuate the situation. Now on to Kay with our next question.
My next question is, in your work, what are the contributing factors that have led to families experiencing homelessness? Let's hear from the good doctors, Dr. Brown and Ashworth, and then Ms. Ruth.
Thank you. So it's usually multiple reasons why a family becomes homeless. And I want to say to you, it's really easy to become homeless. It is not hard at all. And frankly, it's getting easier. What tends to happen with families who are only just making it is that one thing goes wrong, a bill doesn't get paid, then another bill doesn't get paid. And it could be something as simple as their employment becoming seasonal, or their car suddenly breaking down, or suddenly a family member is sick who was paying this little bit of what they needed for the month, and the whole system falls apart because it's like a jigsaw puzzle that's all been very carefully put together, and all the pieces have to work right for that family to stay housed, to pay their utilities, to pay their rent, to get food on the table, and all of the other things. So one little thing can knock them right off. And so I guess that's the most important thing that I have learned working with homeless families, that it is incredibly easy. And once it happens, it's incredibly difficult to solve. And I'm just going to say this. When we evict families, when landlords evict families, it's one of the saddest things I've ever seen in my life. If you have never seen a family's belongings piled up outside with no care for what anybody's doing, with clothes strewn all over, with food and pans and goodness knows what, and garbage thrown on top of clothes that they probably worked really, really hard to get, it's one of the saddest sights that you can ever see. And it is happening far more often in this county now that rents are on the rise. There's less and less housing because Housing is very easy to sell at the moment. So people who used to be landlords are selling their houses. So expect to see a lot more homeless families and a lot more of those dreadful evictions that I frankly could live without ever seeing another eviction again as long as I live. And I'll stop there and hand over to Dr. Ashworth.
Pam, you hit it right on the nose. I mean, I give out down in Edgewater, Maryland, and I give in Brooklyn Park, Maryland, and grateful people, but the many stories that I hear are, thank you so much. I'm so glad this food this month is going to, help out. Or, when we had the gas rise, I had people come into the baby pantry saying, you have no idea. It's either, do I put gas in my car so I can get to work, or do I pay for these expensive diapers? So glad you are all giving these diapers out. And so many stories. And again, I go back to, we are all one paycheck away from being homeless. I mean, it could be today I'm on top of the world and tomorrow I lose my job, or I get sick and I can't afford to stay home, but I have to. And it really puts families in a crunch. And COVID didn't help it. It just perpetuated it and made it worse, which is why I do what I do. Thank you.
And I'll just add, I think that Dr. Ashworth and Dr. Brown have really done a good job covering all of the different factors that lead to homelessness. And in my time working in the school system, it has been a variety of different factors that families are experiencing that lead to homelessness, that add up. Again, it could go back to struggles with substance use, a sudden job loss. Unfortunately, I've seen circumstances where children there's a death of a parent or death of a grandparent who are living in the home and helping to contribute to that income. And, I've seen cases where families have had to move because landlords are not necessarily keeping up with the condition of the housing, or maybe they can't afford to with the rise in cost of that we've seen over the last couple of years. They can't afford to fix the windows. They can't afford to fix the leak. And so what's happening is people are renting these homes that fall into poor condition, and there could be hazardous conditions in the home. It could be mold, mildew, and it's leading to a variety of health conditions, and they can't stay there any longer. We've had families and students who have experienced floods in their homes. They've had their homes catch on fire and they haven't been able to stay in their homes after that. And they're struggling with insurance companies to get things fixed so that they can be rehoused. So it really is a variety of different issues. And once you have an experience like Dr. Brown and Dr. Ashworth were mentioning, if one of those pieces falls out of place, it's very, very easy to find yourself in a position where you're experiencing homelessness, and it's extremely difficult to get out of it.
May I also add another, I think, huge contributing factor, at least what I've seen, especially as I do the outside ministry of feeding, is mental health. I have encountered many of our veterans who are dealing with PTSD and mental health issues, who not necessarily want to be, but because of their emotional inability to make good decisions and to seek out the support that they need in a manner that people are paying attention, they end up living on the street. Not only incapacitated by the need of housing, but by their own thoughts of even just figuring out how to get life together. And so, I always say, when we see those kind of folks on the street, not to just walk by. I know some of them can be frightening, but to ask a question. And the question is, how can I be of assistance? How can I serve you? What are your needs? It may all sound discombobulated initially, but it's one of those opportunities where as I continue to go back to out in the street And at the airport is to eventually build relationships. And I tell you, what do you want? Where did you fix that food? Where did you get that? But as I continue to go back week after week after week, then it was, Miss Shawn, you got a suit? I got an interview next week. Can you bring a suit next week when you come? So it's all about, again, not being fearful of these people that look different, but providing the support. Thank you.
And I'll add just another piece of that. When we look at our homeless data here in Anne Arundel County, currently we have 808 students enrolled under McKinney-Vento. And so those are students that are enrolled under shared housing. They're in a shelter or transitional housing, or they're in a hotel or a motel. And when we have families that find themselves in a hotel and motel, they may just, maybe they are between leases and now they are staying in the hotel. That becomes a very difficult cycle to get out of. Our families then are paying for those hotel rooms night after night, and that's money going out that they don't have. And so this cycle continues where they're stuck in the hotel, unable to get out of the hotel, and not able to save money then to put down for renting a unit. And that can be really challenging. And I think, like Jen had touched on prior, our youth, our unaccompanied homeless youth, our older youth that are on their own, oftentimes they have a very fractured support system, and they don't have those adults that are there to support them. And then they leave and they seek others out, and that's when they end up staying on the couches of friends or relatives or family members that may not want them to necessarily be there. And that can be a really challenging environment for students.
Thank you for all your responses. And just as a follow-up, and this question goes out to any panelists, given all that everyone has mentioned, do you all have any initial thoughts about what the county can do to address these root causes that you mentioned?
Oh, yeah. So one of the problems in Anne Arundel County is that we don't have enough affordable housing. Housing is very, very expensive here. And the minute we start talking about building affordable housing, people in neighborhoods get jumpy. That somehow or other, if you create affordable housing, we're going to have those people come and live amongst us, not realizing that those people are just like us people. We are all exactly the same, trying to work, trying to raise families, etc. So both politically and financially, it's very hard to bring affordable housing to the county. We need that. We need far more money to help families get them back on their feet and do a whole host of things that would help them to get back into housing. There's lots of things that happen for family because they're paying for hotels, then they can't save enough up for the first month's rent and deposit. Because there's so little rental housing, landlords have got very clever now and they ask for double everything. So they ask for double security deposit, double rent. So all of those things require agencies like mine to have the money to help families who are in this sort of money trap where all their money is going on paying the hotel and trying to move forward, and they can't save the money to get out of that circumstance. And just one more thing about living in a hotel, you know, we talk about this, and I think if you've never really been to a hotel where families live, you don't know how awful that is. But basically, it's often anywhere up to 6 or 8 individuals living in one of those hotel rooms with 2 beds. You've all been in them, with 1 bathroom, with 1 set of towels, with 1 set of sheets, usually with a hot, a stove top and maybe a microwave that they're trying to figure out how to cook on, how to wash their dishes in the sink in the bathroom. Because everybody's living like that, they tend to get a lot of roaches and other insects because they're trying to eat and cook and they can't clean. They really are the most depressing, awful places. And when you think they're also trying to get their children ready for school, keep their clothes clean, get them sorted out, it's an awful existence. And it costs sometimes $2,000 a month just to do that, just to keep that hotel roof over their head.
So, Dr. Brown, I say this all the time about the system. And our system, the bureaucracy, it is the haves and have-nots. And I believe that our system needs to cut away the bureaucracy. We have families who want to get help, who try to get help, they go to get help, and there's that one more step, right? There's one more step and loop that they have to jump through that then either keeps the family away or spending and time after time going to the same office with the same pile of papers that they have gathered in documentation. And it's just, for example, I think about our families receiving food stamps. So if you make $1 more than what the requirement is, they cut you off. Well, I might make $1 more, but I still need that $300 in food stamps to feed my family. But the system cuts them totally off. And so it's that we need to fix the system so that the system does not have the barriers that prevent families from truly getting. And I'm not saying that families are not getting help, but we have lots of families who are fighting through the bureaucracy of the system to get what they need. And that's what keeps our families in the state of homelessness or just in crisis because of that. That's just my belief. That's Sean.
I would really like to see more supports around our unaccompanied youth who are experiencing homelessness. So I work at a high school, and I've worked at a high school for basically the past 10 years. And one of the biggest barriers that I'm finding with youth who are unaccompanied, meaning that they're not in the care of their parent or their custodial guardian, is that they end up bouncing from place to place to place to place because they're experiencing homelessness. They don't have obviously adequate, stable, fixed residence. It starts off with, okay, I can stay with my friend. That works out for a month or two. Then they can no longer stay there. And so then it's, all right, I'm going to stay with another friend. That works out for a couple of weeks. But they're trying to piece together where they're going to stay. And I would like to see more supports around housing options for unaccompanied youth who are experiencing homelessness. I would like to see that in Anne Arundel County because it's really difficult as a high school student or a student aged 18 through 24 to be worried about where you're going to stay from night to night and be able to focus on your studies. It's just not doable. And so many of these students often end up in crisis because it's the end of the school day and they have no idea where they're going to go at night. And they don't have necessarily a guardian or a caregiver that's there to help them navigate that. If we had some sort of a youth shelter with case management services provided in the county for our unaccompanied youth, I think that that would be a huge support for that population. It's definitely something that I see as being a need.
And Jen,
so
absolutely, you are exactly right, Jen. There is, we have the only program for unaccompanied for homeless youth in the county, and there has to be a period of time where you work with them and try to figure out how they got where they got. And we wanted to build a shelter, and it was impossible to do it. And so we now have a relationship with a church in Baltimore City, and they have a transitional house for our youth. But let's talk about those youth for a minute and who they are. These are LGBTQ plus youth who've been thrown out of houses. They are children who've run away from foster care. They are children who have been in some sort of violent circumstances in their homes or have come out of juvenile services and nobody wants them. They are the most likely to be trafficked. These are kids who are most in danger, most unsafe. We have one program in the county and it's ours, and we can only take 10 youth every year. And I believe there are at least 300 that we know about on any given night. They are the ones who are not talking, but are homeless. So you were right, Jen. It is a huge need and a most unrecognized population and a most endangered population. These are the children who are most likely to come to harm from drug dealers, from traffickers, because they're looking for someone who will take care of them.
And to add to that, Pam, the shelter system here, we have amazing shelter partners with Lighthouse and Sarah's House. And to access shelter, someone calls the coordinated entry line. There is a coordinated entry line, and those folks are then placed where there is availability for shelter. To be able to access our shelter resources, you have to be 18 years or older. That is the resources that we provide here in Anne Arundel County. However, the state of Maryland allows for minor consent to shelter. So consenting under the age of 18, the unfortunate piece is that that doesn't match any of our shelters here in Anne Arundel County. So while we have sheltered students that are 18 and older, and I think Pam's program supports 18 to 24, there still is that very vulnerable population of those 17-year-olds that don't have access to shelter. And that becomes very challenging because even the rental assistance supports that are available, our 17-year-olds can't sign a lease on their own. They have to be 18. And so it becomes where they're again placed in very vulnerable, unhealthy situations. So definitely, I think youth homeless shelter and sheltering our youth is a priority.
Thank you for all your responses. It definitely gives us a better understanding of what circumstances have led to homelessness in the county, and also how quick things can escalate and the real challenges behind this issue. I think it's very important to address the behind the scenes reality that individuals face who experience homelessness. I will now pass it over to Leah for our next question.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Kate. My next question is, in your experiences, what resources are utilized the most by students and families experiencing homelessness? Well, we will start with Ms. LaKay, and then Dr. Ashworth, and then on to Ms. Ruth.
Thank you. So as I shared before, our students are enrolled under the McKinney-Vento Assistance Act. And one of the provisions that are afforded to our students, there are many, is transportation. So students have the right, if they were permanently housed and now they've been evicted, and let's say they were living in North County High School area and they were permanently housed, evicted, and now their family has had to move into a hotel, but that hotel now serves Glen Burnie High School. So our goal under McKinney-Vento was school stability. And so what we can do is we can provide transportation for our students to continue in their school of origin. That is the school that they were attending when they were permanently housed. And that certainly has helped our students to be connected and continue the connection with the educators and the student service staff that support them. I had shared we have 808 students enrolled under McKinney-Vento, and initially we had about 240, maybe 263 students request transportation. So that means they are living away from their school of origin, and now we're providing them transportation to continue there. But since the beginning of the school year, we've had about 240 change requests in transportation, so that our students moving from place to place, and each time they're moving, then they need their transportation to be changed so they can continue to go to that school of origin. And so their relationship and the family's relationship with the pupil personnel workers that support our McKinney-Vento families is very critical in helping them access transportation. So that has been is certainly key. And of course, our McKinney-Vento students are being impacted by the challenges that we have in transportation. We cannot deny that, but we are trying to work as hard as we can to make sure that those impacts are limited and as short as they can be. The other thing that we provide that our students access in regards to transportation is we can provide transportation to special events, or if we have a student that is participating in an extracurricular activity, for example, our high school students that may be participating in basketball or track or football, and now they need transportation after practice or to the weekend games, we do provide that transportation to them. So again, that's coordinated with conversations with their pupil personnel worker so that students can fully participate in their school experience. And so transportation definitely something that our families reach for and we support. A lot of our pupil personnel workers have families requesting support with rental assistance and hotel fees. And that is not something within our capacity to support. And that's when we really lean in to the community agencies to provide those resources for us. Certainly, Dr. Brown, the Partnership for Children, Youth, and Family, Community Action Agency, referring families to help them get that rental assistance or additional money so that they continue their hotel stay if our shelters are not available. And as I shared before, we do have a coordinated entry, and that certainly is a resource that we have our families call the shelter screening line if they're in need of shelter, so they can be assessed and placed on the list to be able to access shelter at Sarah's House or Lighthouse. Those are the shelters that support our families. So those are the ones that we see our families using most often. And Jen can kind of talk a little bit about the other resources that we have available for our students here in AACPS as well.
So I would say after transportation, one of the resources that I feel our students and families utilize most often is probably the financial assistance component that is connected to the McKinney-Vento Act. So students, in order to remove barriers so that they're able to be successful in school, we are able to help with school-related costs. So that could be anything from if there's a class fee, to senior dues, to assistance with purchasing cap and gown, to being able to help support them to purchase materials for extracurricular activities or athletics. And that seems to be extremely helpful because many times students feel a sense of relief knowing that those are items that we can help with so that they can then, the family can save whatever money they do have so that they can use that for other things such as groceries or the electricity bill, or, you know, whatever they need at that time. So that's what I see. I would say transportation is absolutely the number one resource, but following that would be financial assistance from the school.
And because I run the streets, I would say food. People, they are in need of food. And so, you know, food for thought. We serve every week, but we are consistently serving in the Brooklyn Park area every other month. And every other month, we see the same and more people that come out. And one of the things that we try to do, not only do we, with our partnerships with the partnership and Maryland Food Bank and Anne Arundel County Food Bank, is I like to talk. So I meet people all the time and people are constantly giving me things. And so what I try to do every other month is to help families save money. So I go out with household products. I go out with detergents and things like that, and diapers and household pots and pans and clothes and all those things that I know cost, that if I can give out every other month, that I'm going to hopefully allow that family to put towards the rent money so that they do have housing or for gas in the car. But I would say next to transportation, absolutely food is a need, is a priority, and they'll take whatever they can get. And clothes. I remember one month we were giving out and the clothes went before the food. That was the need that month. And then I also sit on the board with Community Action Agency and, you know, listening and to hearing the reports as we meet every month. And I think, Jen, you mentioned this, another big need is helping with the electricity bill. So they'll pay their rent, but the electricity bill is now $4, $5, maybe even $1,000 because they've taken all their coins to make sure that they have housing. And so getting BG&E help from the Community Action Agency has also been a need for many of our families. Thank you.
Which is huge to be able to help with those components, because then you're preventing a family from potentially experiencing homelessness. So I'm glad you brought up that food component too, because I do have many families that will call for food assistance as well. And we've been so fortunate to be able to provide them resources so that they do have adequate food in the home.
And
I think
just
COVID I'm sorry, Jen, I was going to say, and to that, COVID created an opportunity. And again, thanks to the partnership, we have many, 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 many churches, food banks, pop-ups that have been occurring in our county since COVID hit, that have continued. Again, thank you to the partnership and the funding, because that is a need. I don't think it's going to go away. It increased, and the numbers are still going up. It's not going to go away. So we must keep our food banks filled. Thank you to all the donations, because our communities are absolutely in need.
And I was just going to add, with the additional funding, the ARP HCY funding that came through, there was additional funding that the government provided the school system to be able to support our homeless youth. And we've been able to provide in our homeless families, we've been able to create some really robust partnerships. One of the unique things we were able to do with the funding that we've never been able to do before is offer gift cards to our families. Walmart gift cards and fast food gift cards and some gas gift cards. And so we can easily get those to our families. Those are requests that come through the PPW. We're able to get that to the family so that then they can purchase the food that they want for their family, that they need for their family, purchase the clothing, hygiene products. So we've been able to offer those gift cards to families, which is definitely unique. And we have issued quite a few, and I think it's definitely been a good program that we've initiated.
And it's been extremely helpful that since COVID, the Anne Arundel County Warm Line is also a resource for students and families. They can call and they can find food available to them that's local to their area. So that's been a huge help as well.
All right, thank you so much for all the information. And I believe it's so important for us to know what resources are available in the community or are being used the most, so that we know what to advocate for and to make sure that we have equitable systems in place so that those who need the most have direct access to them. And now I would like to pass the question back to Kate.
Thank you, Abiha. Our next question is, what are some community resources available to assist families with locating food and affordable housing? We will start with Dr. Ashworth and then Dr. Brown.
Thank you, Kate. And so I mentioned many churches from all around our county, and food banks and pantries and schools, because some of our schools have what we call backpack buddies, and those families who are experiencing some food need. Many of our children go home on Fridays with a backpack full of canned foods. But there is, and Pam, I'm putting you on the spot, through the partnership, there's a nice list that is out, and you probably can find it on the county website, of every single pop-up, pantry, church, sidekick, wagon that is providing food through literally across our county. Families would be able to seek out, as well as the churches, and our Maryland Food Bank, of course, and our Anne Arundel County Food Bank. Put in the plug every other month. Food for Thought is down in Brooklyn, and we are feeding probably close to 200 families every other month. I'm also in Edgewater, and there are several churches that are literally a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday families in need. If you look up on either the church's websites or at Facebook, lots of food flyers are posted there, but there's food literally in our county, probably given out every day in some shape or form around our county. Thank you.
And the big things, we have 3 shelters. We have the partnership have something called a rapid rehousing program. It's an intensive case management program, and that means we work with families and try to figure out all the obstacles to them staying permanently housed. So that can be anything from mental health services, or the fact that the job that they have doesn't pay enough, or they've got a horrible back bill of electricity, and we figure out how to coordinate with all of the agencies to try to get those barriers removed. We also have something called the Brick-It team. The Brick-It team is the bricks and mortar team, and it is all of the people from all the different agencies who meet with families and try to make an action plan with them as partners with families in the services and the resources that they need. So, I mean, I think that we have an array of services. We don't have enough services. We need to figure out more routine ways of doing things like getting birth certificates. A lot of the things that happen to families is that because they keep moving and keep getting evicted, they lose all their documents. So then you've got to have things like an ID. You've got to get a photograph ID, you've got to get them a birth certificate. And often you're looking for things like bank statements, because that's what landlords need. And some of our families have got some criminal involvement, sometimes way in their past, but that will pull up when they apply for housing. And so we got to figure out how to get those things expunged. And we don't really have a routine way to do those things. So whereas we have these little programs like mine, we probably serve 40 to 60 families a year. It's not enough. It's just not enough. And so there are resources. There are 2 warm lines. We have a warm line. It's a 1-800 number that anybody can call for anything. Our mental health agency has a warm line for the same reason. So, I mean, I think there's lots of places to call. I would say that we are short on resources overall, and a routine, structured way of delivering those resources to families. So we've sort of, all of us, and we all work together very closely, me and Sean and Jen and everyone else, we know one another for years. And we really have a wonderful relationship, but it needs a sort of systemic approach to the issue. And frankly, that costs money.
Pam, you triggered a thought in mine that I always, as I help some of my peeps that are in the community who are trying to get IDs and things like that. And here's this, my vision is to have a one-stop shop. That building, though, the services are going to operate through the night, because here's what I think also is a barrier. I work, but if I take off to go get the ID I need to get that support that I need, I don't get paid. But you close at 4:30. I can't afford to take off from work to go get the ID that I need to get the services that I need. And so now I go without, and then it continues to perpetuate. And so I believe that's another barrier. We've got to your point of creating this systemic approach that also is flexible to our working poor people who can't afford to take off to get the ID that you're asking me to have because I don't get paid. And so we got to think about how to provide those services and supports. And I get people working long hours, but we got to figure out how to do that so that people can still get their needs. And we have many organizations, especially our fraternal organizations, who will offer workshops on the weekends that offer those opportunities, expungement clinics and things like that. But again, many of our people who need to get there either can't get there because of transportation or they got to work. So we've got to figure that out as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for your input on this question. This information is very useful in identifying resources that are out there in the county and the resources we still need to address the issue of homelessness. I will now pass it over to Abiha for our next question.
All right, thank you. Dr. Ashworth, in your work with Food for Thought Community Outreach Services, how can residents best serve the homeless that we see out on the street? What are some best practices for helping them? Like what resources are available and where can we assist?
So I started out early by saying we need to see them first, right? When we see them, we need to see them and provide the support. And even if that's just a, hello, how you doing, sir, ma'am, how can I help? But yes, I often, I'm not only in Anne Arundel County, but I also serve I call them my peeps, in Baltimore City as well. And so how do I best serve them? I meet them where they are, right? I think that's the other thing, not what I have, but I meet them. And so, I have a great partnership and donations from Bomba Socks. And so I'm constantly handing out socks and toiletries. And through that, then they begin to warm up and say what they need. Now, my nonprofit right now has a lot of pieces to it, but I'm only been doing the food piece because I still got to work. But I'm there with cards. I have business cards. I have flyers from other organizations, from our health organizations. And so I'm constantly putting flyers and cards and writing down and scribbling on pieces of paper and telling people to call this one or call this agency. Tell them that I told you to call. And so really, it's just talking to them and handing a flyer or a brochure or even taking them to. I don't know how many times although my friends and family will say, Sean, you're crazy, but how many times I've put people in my car to say, you got to go where? I got you. Okay, meet me on that corner that I always see you on, and I'll come pick you up because I need to make sure you get to, wherever it is that they need to do. So how can they help? How can people help? See them as humans, and then ask the question, how can I be of service? What is it that you need? And then try to pass on as much information. I always say I'm in the streets. I have a lot of connections with people and resources. And so I regurgitate all of that out to the individuals that I meet in the community based on what they need. See them.
I think as the winter months are coming upon us, it's important to know that we do offer in Anne Arundel County winter relief. So that is shelter for the cold evenings. And if you see someone that is in need of shelter that is on the street, you can have them call the shelter screening line. So the shelter screening line number, and I can just share it here, is 410-421-7260. So 410-421-7260. And by calling a shelter screening line, they can have access to a spot in winter relief. Also with the cold winter months, they do open emergency warming centers in Anne Arundel County. The Stanton Center in Annapolis is often opened as a warming center. The community rooms in the police stations throughout the county are open as warming centers. And so families can go, families with children can go, single adults can go to the warming shelter. So that's good information to have. And I think if you see someone and you're not sure what to do or what resource to provide them, it's always good to have the crisis warm line number handy. That can be a number, something that you can give, that that when that individual calls that number, there will be someone on the other line that is going to guide them and support them and give them a resource. So I think that that's just important to have a couple resources that that you can provide when you come upon someone that needs assistance.
Our Department of Social Services also has a homeless department, and they have been providing support. I know at one time it was in our local hotels, and There's some new in Glen Burnie. And I can't. It's freezing in my brain. But I would also reach out to the Department of Social Services, to their homeless department. They also provide support for families and individuals who are in need of temporary, and then eventually they try to get them some permanent housing as well.
Yeah, Justin Beeler is the
Justin,
DSS
yes.
homeless coordinator. Justin is incredible. He and his team work really hard. I know Pam and I collaborate with him often on many things, and he and his team are a great resource. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ashworth and Ms. LeKay, for this great information. Now, I would like to pass over to Larry for the next question.
Ms. LeKay, can you tell us what initiatives have been attempted or are currently in place that help people experiencing homelessness to create a stable living environment and have an opportunity to break from their current cycle of homelessness?
So I could speak to some education initiatives, because I think education is critical in breaking the cycle of homelessness for our families and for our young people. We are very fortunate in the state of Maryland. Our homeless youth, our unaccompanied homeless youth, and any youth that is enrolled as homeless or at McKinney-Vento is able to receive a college tuition waiver. So their tuition to any public college or university can be waived. And this is huge for our youth that are applying to college. And then there are several grants that students can then apply for that can cover the room and board and some of the other fees. And so it's important. I know our student service team, our school counselors are working really hard to make sure students are completing the FAFSA. Some of you that are seniors might have already been a part of that process, but completing the FAFSA so that they can be able to get and access that tuition waiver. And one of the programs that we do through our department is the Power of One mentoring program. And that is where we pair an unaccompanied homeless youth, a senior that's experiencing homelessness, with a student service team member to mentor them throughout their senior year with the goal of graduation and completing the FAFSA, and then having that caring adult help them through that challenging process. So those of you that are in your senior year, you know how challenging that process is. Imagine being a youth going through that process on their own. That's even more challenging. So we do have the Power of One mentor program that we have in place to support our youth. The other partnership that we have created, and Dr. Brown can chime in about this, is our Operation Open Doors program. And this is a partnership with the Partnership with Children, Youth, and Families, the Department of Social Services, Justin and his department and his team, and our team, our people personnel workers, where we can refer our families, our McKinney-Vento families, to receive a voucher. And so what's unique about this process is, as you heard Dr. Brown share before, the voucher and receiving a voucher is a really cumbersome and challenging process. And it takes a lot of persistence. And so we have been able to partner with Dr. Brown and her team to have housing specialists walk our families through that application process, help them with submitting that application to the Housing Commission. And then once they receive that voucher, working with them to find housing that they can use their voucher for, move into that housing, and then provide case management support for that family for a year as they're in that housing, so that that housing can be sustained. And so far in our program, we have housed, with our particular partnership, we've housed 12 families. We have 6 right now holding vouchers, seeking housing, and we have, I think, about 4, maybe close to 9 that are working on their application. So this has been a really unique partnership that we've been able to do, and definitely beyond something that we've done before in the past. So it's been great to work alongside Dr. Brown with that initiative. One other thing that we did that was really unique, a partnership that we did this summer and we have for the last 2 summers, has been with Parks and Recreation. And we've been able to offer a camp over the summer for our elementary age students that have spent most of their school year in a hotel. And so we're able to provide this summer camp for them. It's different than the ones that are typically provided by the county because we run it Monday through Friday. We run it 8 to 4, and it really then also serves as a secondary day. It serves as daycare for the family. So then they can work and bring in money so that they can eventually find themselves out of the hotel. So we work alongside Parks and Rec staff to offer recreation services, and then we offer academic services too. So those are some of the initiatives that we have done. And certainly we have so many partners in this work in the community that have their own initiatives and their own goals around this work, that I would welcome anybody to explore those. We do have the Coalition to End Homelessness. That is a monthly meeting that occurs. Dr. Brown and I are on that coalition, as well as other homeless serving agencies. And we talk about the consolidated plan on ending homelessness here in Anne Arundel County. And while there are board meetings, there are general meetings that are open to the public to attend and listen and be a part of. And so I will welcome folks to participate and listen in on some of those general meetings, and you can hear some of the initiatives and the great work that is occurring around the county with our homeless serving agencies. And the Anne Arundel Community Development Services, ACDS, they are the folks that host our coalition meeting, and information about the coalition meetings, you can find that on their website.
Thank you. There's truly been a tremendous amount of great information and resources. We had the chance to hear from various organizations and agencies about homelessness. So now we want to turn our attention to a very personal story from someone who's experienced homelessness. Miss Carolyn Williams is a graduate of ACPS and former student member of the Board of Education from 2016 to 2017. While Miss Williams was a student in ACPS, she experienced homelessness for most of her sophomore year of high school and was at risk of being homeless again during her senior year. While serving as SMOB, as someone who lived through homelessness, this crisis mattered deeply to her. She believes in being transparent about her firsthand experiences with homelessness and how it has impacted her life. Miss Williams is currently a teacher at Glen Burnie High School and very much wants to be there for her students, to support them in whatever way she can, and to show them that your circumstances don't define you, but can be used to propel you forward. Miss Williams.
Thank you all so much for including me in this conversation. As a graduate of Anne Arundel County Public Schools and a former student who was homeless during my time here, I would like to just share a bit of my story with you. I was homeless my sophomore year of high school at Glen Burnie, and then was partially homeless again my senior year, which is when I was also serving as the student board member. The first time that I experienced homelessness, I went practically the entire first semester without saying anything because of the perception that I felt like the world had on homeless individuals. And I had never experienced something like that before. I didn't know what to say. I did not know where to go. Luckily, I was involved in my student government here at Glen Burnie High School and reached out to my advisor, Ms. Delise Brown, and she pointed me in the direction of counseling. And that's where I met my pupil personnel worker at the time, Miss Lynn Weiss, who absolutely changed my life here. She reminded me that my circumstance did not take away from the education that I was receiving here at Glen Burnie and the future that I was going to have after I graduated. We put a plan in place for me at school, got in touch with all of my teachers to let them know the situation. And really, during my time of experiencing homelessness, is when I decided that I wanted to be transparent about the things that I was experiencing, knowing that it was not just me who was going through it. And that really motivated me during my journey to run for student board member. I was partially homeless my senior year when I served as student board member. I had teachers like Molly Stavely, who I speak so highly of all the time. She is the reason why I'm even back here teaching at Glen Burnie now. I had coworkers that worked with me on the board who supported me. Dr. Arlotto at the time was a champion for me. They made sure that I had the resources that I needed to still perform my job as well. I was the first student board member who had not had transportation of her own. So they worked with one of the cab services that the county has been working with to make sure that I had transportation. That was a resource that I did not know was provided, and found out that they utilized that for other students in the county as well. I got in touch with some of the local food banks because of my pupil personnel worker, Miss Lynn Weiss. So my mom and I were able to have food. The Salvation Army that is here in Glen Burnie reached out and actually helped us bring furniture when we found a place. And now Glen Burnie High School has this signature program that is focused on public service, exactly what this community needs and exactly what a student like myself wished that I would have known about when I was experiencing homelessness during my time here. There are resources here. I speak so highly of AACPS all the time for the outreach, for the all means all mentality. Not one point once I reached out did I feel like I was worthless. Did I feel like I was less than? Did I feel like I was not going to be able to get done what I needed to get done here at school to move on and to become who I am today? I am so thankful that I went through the journey that I went through, that I'm able to be a part of this, and that I'm able to show you that just because you experience it does not mean that it has to define you. You can use it to champion you and to move forward. There are people here who will help you. There are services in place. And if there's nothing that you see yet, help create it.
Thank you for sharing your story, Ms. Williams. Before we end for the evening, do any panelists have any advice as to what we as students can do to help with this crisis in our county?
Well, I think you're doing one of the most important things, which is helping us to educate everybody about the issue. So I think that's one of the most important things students can do. And I really am very, very grateful that you've held this forum. So thank you.
And I think youth respond best to youth. And now that you have this information and you understand our definition of homelessness and the resources that are available for students, if you see a student that you think is experiencing homelessness, you're unsure, maybe if you're not sure how to approach the student, share your concern with the student services team at your school, why you think that student may be experiencing homelessness, and then they can take it from there. But I think, and even talking to your peers, if you think that they're experiencing homelessness, that there are resources out there available for them.
I would say ditto and ditto. And I think the biggest thing, because we know how youth can be judgmental at times, which then turns into bullying. And so before you judge and before you bully, ask the question, hey, what's going on, man? I noticed, and Jennifer already said it, seek out a student support service person in the building, the counselor, and just say, hey, they don't really want me to tell you, because we know, right? Your friends will say, but don't tell, because I don't want my mother to get in trouble. I don't want my grandma to get in trouble. And so when you share that story with your student support services, make sure you share that as well. And then you also say to your friend, man, girl, I care about you and I want to make sure you get support. And this is the way to do it. Did you know that there's lots of resources out there? Let me help.
Thank you all to the panelists and special guests for your insights on homelessness in Anne Arundel County and this captivating discussion. Your contribution to this issue is essential in order to address the fallacy around this topic, educate residents on assets that are available, and provide meaningful steps for the best practices to take action in communities. It's important to note that all the questions were submitted by AACPS students and families, so you are truly meeting the needs that residents want to know more about. By sharing your expertise, we're able to raise awareness and address homelessness in the county, but also work towards making a positive impact in the society we live in today.
To close, let us remember that homelessness is not a choice, but rather a journey that many find themselves in. As Mother Teresa said, we think sometimes that poverty is only being hungry, naked, and homeless. The poverty of being unwanted, unloved, and uncared for is the greatest poverty. We must start in our own homes to remedy this kind of poverty. And to close, if you are a middle or high school student in AACPS and would like to know more about what we do at Let's Talk Justice, feel free to email us at letstalkjustice@aacps.org. Visit our website at www.aacps.org/Let's Talk Justice, or follow us on our Instagram at lets.talk.justice. Thank you for joining us.